Boy, the realtors don't like the Taylor Swift tax, and don't call it the Taylor Swift tax. That is a big no-no, and you will learn that from Bruce Lane. Not Bruce Wayne, but Bruce Lane from the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, who recorded a discussion with me about this particular matter yesterday. So unlike most programs where we do everything in order, I talk to you about some of the issues of the day, and then we talk to our guests, which we do in order. Sometimes we pre-tape our interviews, so I know exactly what he has to say about this, and he's not happy. And a lot of folks are not happy about Governor Raimondo's proposal to tag us for about $11 to $13 million worth of tax on the people who can absolutely afford it. He says it's about a whole lot more than that. So I encourage you to stay tuned. Welcome into my State of Mind. I am Dan York. It is an honor to have you aboard. Good Holy Thursday to you. By the way, program note, we have already produced our Good Friday program for tomorrow as well with some terrific clergy. So the entire program will be dedicated to the solemn day of the Christian calendar, and I hope you find it a meaningful experience. All right, let us go to the rundown. The pension settlement is done, sort of. I was at home plate today. I didn't have my bat, but I visualized the ball flying over the right field fence into the river. We have some really bad numbers coming out of Cranston when it comes to the amount of teachers who take off on the weekends. I'll tell you what that's all about. More and more coaches are canceling in a terrible, terrible display of unsportsmanlike conduct by states. And there's a new ad campaign or a marketing campaign going on in Rhode Island, and your state of mind means a lot to us. So let's get to it. Pension settlement. Yeah, okay, so this just in. Now, don't tell anybody, but we record this broadcast around 4:30 most afternoons, okay? From 4 to 4:30. We do it like it's live. There are no takes. There's no take twos. Did we ever have a take two, Laura? I think we did once. The machine blew up or something. But I'm only just getting some of this information about the pension settlement as we are producing the show. You may have already seen a whole lot more in the 6 o'clock news and the like. And so tomorrow on the radio on WPRO, we'll have much to say about this, weekdays noon to 3. But the settlement headline looks like this. That is Judge Sarah Taft Carter, who has orchestrated what I think is just a judicially bad form deal. I mean, I use the word corrupt, not because I think anybody's taken, brown bags of cash, but because this has been an absolute disaster in transparency, a disaster in process. These union voters, as you see here, didn't even know what the value of their vote is. We learned today that 2 small unions voted this settlement down. I don't know what that means in terms of how this settlement's going to be executed. I did hear today that there's a 45-day window for this thing to be ratified by the General Assembly. So now the judges are telling the General Assembly what timetable they have to operate on. More when we get it tomorrow on the radio. We have the Good Friday show tomorrow. I'll have more to say about this on Monday. And isn't it kind of convenient that all this stuff is going to come crashing down and the information is going to be available just as you get into your solemn day and holy Easter day? Nothing surprises me. So today in Down City, Providence, we stood at home plate. Headline, projo.com. On tour, potential new stadium site in Providence. The new owner outlines his plans. Yes, Jim Skeffington took us on a little tour. Can we roll the tour video? There we go. Thanks, Laura. I don't know if I asked for that order, but that's my handy camera work. Pretty good, huh? Well, not really. It's like a bad home video. But that's the site, 195 Development Land. Those are people in the press also using their video cameras and their iPhones. But that move to the right there would be right field, about 310 to the pole, he says. And there's Skeffington standing, the co-owner now of the Paw Sox, standing at home plate, talking about his dream he has for baseball there. He was trying to hold kind of a, let me show you what I think and visualize conference. It turned into a very serious press conference where the media, God forbid, had some really good questions about how this whole thing is going to come down. And there's one thing that he said about this that I found to be fascinating, subtly, tactically brilliant, but dangerous as well. Listen to this.
I don't want to be one of the principal owners of taking a team out of my own home state. So we have a common objective. The idea now is to get together and see if we can't forge a plan that's satisfactory to all sides. we've been asked if we would set forth a plan that would allow us to stay in Rhode Island. That's what we intend to do. I'd like to think we're being, recruited to stay here, as opposed to me petitioning to stay here.
Very interesting. We're being recruited as opposed to we're trying to get something done with the state and the city on our own. We're not selling the state and the city. They need us more than we need them, type of thing. He mentioned about some of the elected officials who have said on the record, including the governor, that they don't want to be the custodians of a loss of the Paw Sox in Rhode Island. If I were the governor, I'd bring Mr. Skeffington in and say, all due respect, and I respect your history, your talent, your resume, your financial position, your new ownership, your brilliance, your ideas, all of that. But if you position me as needing you more than you need us, guess what? This deal's done. Stop it. I'll hopefully have Mr. Skeffington in next week sometime, and we'll get a chance to talk about it. Sick day abuse is brutal. Here's a headline out of Cranston. This is about the Good Friday controversy. We've talked about this a lot. I side with the teacher union on this controversy. You can't dictate how somebody observes a holy day or a religious observance day of whatever kind, right? And that's at the crux of this controversy about whether they can take Good Friday off. And we've kind of belabored the point, and I'm not going to do it here. But this is horrifying. Superintendent Lunston was on the WPR Morning News this morning and talked about some of the pressures of deciding whether they're going to have school tomorrow or not. Still not yet decided at press time. And she talked about the kind of absenteeism from teachers on the weekends. Well, listen to this.
Average Friday, we have approximately 10 to 12% of our staff, which means about 100 to 120 on a Friday or a Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we are lower. We have 5 to 7% on those days.
You get like 15 sick days in Cranston, and now you can see that they're strategically used by some teachers as a long weekend producer. That is a cultural problem inside education that can only be addressed by a change of culture by teachers. You want to know why you get a lot of bad PR, teachers? It's because of data like that, which is indisputably embarrassing and unprofessional. Next item. Speaking of unprofessional or unconstitutional or un-American, yeah, more coaches canceled going to the NCAA on the dime of their respective state universities, mostly in New York. Why? Because of this fiasco.
Indiana Republicans released new language intended to stop the furious backlash over the state's new religious freedom law. The amendment prohibits service providers from using the law as a legal defense to refuse goods or services, and it bans discrimination based on race, religion, or sexual orientation. With the Final Four arriving in Indianapolis this weekend, the NCAA released a statement saying it's pleased with the legislature's newest action and is calling on the governor to sign it into law.
Fine, but here's the thing. State governors, issuing travel bans and non-essential visit bans, mostly for the college basketball tournament, is an outrageous abuse of, they wouldn't want it done to them. If you've got an internal state debate, you ought to be able to debate it publicly without the threat of, anti-commerce, literally, from fellow states. Connecticut being one of them, New York, with multiple coaches not going to that tournament, being another. Outrageous, unbelievable. Hey, you want to recommend RI? That is something that they're asking you to do, they being the tourism folks. There's a picture of Colonel O'Donnell from the state police, looking kind of, well, got a funny smile on his face there, protecting lives and jobs in Rhode Island. See, the narrative underneath talks about how we actually got a convention of law enforcement officers to Rhode Island, and they're asking folks who know folks to come to Rhode Island so they could have more folks here. It's interesting. It's an intra-state marketing campaign, meaning a marketing campaign to us, ourselves. Interesting. Your state of mind is important to us. Give me a ring, 228-1886. Email me or Facebook post. We'll pick up on that when we can. We're running a little late. We'll get to our interview with our guy who doesn't like the Taylor Swift tax. Stay with us. Let me tell you something. Sometimes our guests aren't privy to the video that we're going to run in the program, but Bruce was privy to the 9-second piece of video that I'm going to run here right now, and he already started to go, oh, after he saw the governor say this.
If you are able to buy a $5 million second home having to pay a few thousand more dollars, I don't think is going to affect your behavior.
Bruce Lane is the president of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. I keep thinking Bruce Wayne. You get that a lot,
okay,
don't
I get
you?
that a lot.
Right, don't you? Yeah. So that wasn't new. It's like when someone says, "Hey, are you from New York?" Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. You began to have mild bodily response to the governor's commentary. We're talking about the Taylor Swift tax. Can we put up the headline, Jess, real quick here? There is Taylor Swift's house. This is not just about Taylor Swift's house. If it was just about Taylor Swift's house, it might be more palatable to everybody, philosophy aside. But the governor has proposed in her budget a tiny little tax on properties, second properties, owned by folks that are valued at $1 million or more.
Yes.
And your association is not happy.
No.
Talk to me.
Okay. I guess first to start with, they say the Taylor Swift tax, and I wish there was a way of putting it. It's not a Taylor Swift tax. It's not a oceanfront property $5 million or more tax. It's a statewide property tax. That's what it is. It's a statewide property tax, and we don't have one in Rhode Island. We never have had one, so this is new. And it's on properties that are assessed for $1 million or more, residential, non-owner occupied. So inclusive in that is 2 to 5 unit apartments, which some people are saying, well, there aren't any that are for $1 million. Go to the east side of Providence, and I'll show you some. Go to Newport, and you'll see some. 2 to 5 units, a vacant piece of land that's zone residential, is non-owner occupied, that falls within there. It's a statewide property tax. So if it was specific to just the $5 million houses or better, we'd still be opposed to it. But I just want to clarify, it's not a Taylor Swift tax. And I think that the legs of this tax took off because somebody called it that, and it made national news. So some more look at Rhode Island, that we've got some higher property taxes again. So here we are with this tax that's being proposed. If it ever were to get into the budget, here's our biggest concern. So it's $1 million this year. It's $2.50 per thousand. Okay, what happens next year? It's passed. So let's move it from $1 million to $900,000. Okay, let's move it from $2.50 to $2.75. So now somebody who had a house that was, so now we've cast our net larger. I guess our main message is that the Rhode Island real estate market is starting to recover. We're doing okay. Things are getting better. We're selling more houses. Property values are going up. Not as quick as we'd like, but they're going up. If you put any negative talk on anything to do with the real estate market, I think that you're being very risky. And we all know that if the housing market does well, then the local economy follows after. So it doesn't make sense to do this. We look at our neighboring properties, Massachusetts, Connecticut. They don't do it. Now, Massachusetts, they used to call Massachusetts Taxachusetts. They don't do that anymore. Why? Because the Massachusetts real estate market is doing really well. We want to do really well. So yeah, we want to copy Massachusetts. They're not doing this.
All right, so you are competing for the contest that we like to call easiest guest to have, because you are so revved up with this. You could go on about it for quite some time. And there's nothing that you've said here that I have a qualm with, so you're not going to get a debate from me. But I want to talk about a couple things that you said and expand. First of all, you talked about the Taylor Swift tax and it being kind of a misnomer, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I've kind of wondered why the governor has actually enjoyed answering the question about the Taylor Swift tax, because I think if she's heck bent on getting this thing done, that she'd rather hide behind the idea that it's a bunch of outside Rhode Island rich folks who can afford it anyway. What is the big deal? This is a chance for a money grab for us, and it has nothing to do with the quality of life of most Rhode Islanders anyway. Okay. You think?
Well, if I was delivering the message from the other side,
yeah.
Would I want to say, just so you know, this affects a lot of other people, and you know,
no.
I understand, so I wouldn't.
Right.
And so to use the word 5 million, it's not 5 million, it's $1 million. Now, there are folks who have had.
But your visceral reaction to the Taylor Swift concept here I think is well placed and strategic in the sense that most folks will kind of roll their eyes and not care very much about the idea that it's people not like me that are going to get whacked with this tax.
Right.
The idea that Rhode Island and, in Connecticut and Massachusetts don't have one ought not to be a subtle point either, right?
Right.
It's horrifying the way we haven't, in my judgment, we haven't made ourselves competitive on every tax level. I see it as the clear solution for Rhode Island. We'll be more competitive than anybody. This makes us less competitive in your industry,
Yes.
period.
Yes. And if you talk about all Rhode Islanders being affected by this, if the real estate market stops or slows down because of this, and your house value stops growing, some of us could still be underwater, responsibly underwater, but underwater. And we're waiting for the day that the market gets up far enough that there's equity in our house. What do you do when you have equity in the house? Not saying I'm agreeing with it. You will do a home improvement. You'll do a home improvement and you'll spread it back into the local economy. If you stagnate the values in Rhode Island, and yes, a small little minuscule tax as it's referred to, it's not. It could hurt the market. So, somebody quoted me as saying, yeah, and they got me when I said hands off. Hands off the real estate market, the housing market. Please, leave it alone. Let us continue to move as we are.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk about whether or not the realtors have to defend themselves as a bunch of money-grubbing, commission-seeking individuals here. Stay with us. He's the president of the Rhode Island Association. I don't know why that's a problem for me today. The state of Rhode Island. Rhode Island Association of Realtors, Bruce Lane. Your industry is just full of a bunch of commission hawks. You're a self-interested, agendaed group arguing against the governor's little tiny tax on really, really expensive properties.
Okay. Well, let's see if this went through and people start selling their multi-million-dollar houses. Yeah, this perhaps could be something good for the realtor. That's not.
When everybody
not what we're
dumps
here.
their property,
Right,
at least
right.
it'll be a short-term hit for everybody, right?
Right. So this is, look, I'm an advocate for the housing market in Rhode Island. That's what I'm here to talk about. And I know that everything that we do to preserve that market makes Rhode Island better, makes the economy better, makes the values of properties go up so people can start relaxing again. So
You made a really salient point in the last break about those good citizens who are still upside down on their homes after the timing and the hit of 07, 08, whose value might be less than their mortgage, but who are at least keeping up with their mortgage. I mean, the American scum that walked away from their homes in 2007 and 8, who could afford their mortgage but just saw an equity hit escape them, I think really hurt this economy even worse than it had to be hurt. But there are good people out there that just timing-wise bought their house in a time when, it was at the top of the market and bang, it crashed. They are holding on for a better day, right?
I use the term responsibly underwater. They're underwater, but they're still paying the bills. And as the equity is increasing a little bit at a time, that's what we're preserving here. I mean, you can look into this. Another thing that's not talked about is, here's a perfect example. I own a waterfront property. It's been in my family for 30, 40 years. It was something that cost less than $100,000, and we've kept it in the family. We pay our property taxes. We're a second homeowner, so we don't use the schools, but we pay into the schools, so good for us. We come down in the summer and we spend money. And we spend money for dinner and that, so we create sales tax revenue. So we're a good to have. Then we get the great floods of 2010, and all of us, we got pushed into mandatory flood insurance if we had a mortgage, and then the flood insurance went up. So that went up to some places $6,000, $10,000 or plus. So they've got to pay that. They've got to pay the property tax. Now because I'm assessed over $1 million, I want to pay that. But here's the next one is, in order to pay for that, I decide that I'm going to rent my house for a couple weeks out of the year because I can get $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a week to make that happen. Okay, there's a tax in the budget that they're proposing of 13% on people who are going to rent their houses for 30 days or less, going to get treated like a hotel. 7% sales tax, 6% hotel tax. So now let me tax you $2.50 for your over $1 million non-owner occupied. keep paying your flood insurance, and oh, by the way, we'd like to collect 13% from you too. What's that going to do to
Well,
the real
governor's
estate market?
people would say, well, we're just passing that on to the customer, the renter.
Right, passing it on.
Yeah.
And then
Who,
some
by the way,
renters
shop for price.
who
like,
absolutely shop
Yeah.
for it and will not rent the property if they go too high. And then what happens to that?
Go to the Cape.
Supply and demand. Exactly. So we're
Yeah.
going to chase them out of Rhode Island. So
what's your association doing about this, Mr. Lane?
we are having all of our members, realtor members, speak to everybody to call your state legislator. They're the ones who are going. They're the ones.
The old formula.
Yep, who are going to, and we're making our
You think
voices
it
heard.
works, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you have to really stand on your head over this one. The governor threw this in as a cherry on top or as a principal concept. I'm not sure which. I haven't been able to figure it out.
You know, in fairness to the governor, I don't know if they knew exactly what was in that bill when they put it there. I think that if at face value it was the $5 million houses, it probably would not have created such a, but I don't think that it was defined enough in that it's a small segment of income, they say, whatever, $11.8 million this year.
Right. Let's make sure that you were clear on it. That's the income that this tax will be generating for the general budget, and it is against an $8.6 billion budget, a small cash flow. But my worry is your worry, which is that once it's in place,
Right.
the cash flow can be increased exponentially simply by taking the threshold of $1 million homes and beginning to drop it.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's our biggest fear.
In general, how is the real estate market right now?
Real estate market is doing good. I mean, we had the winter was a little harsh, but we're seeing it now. Like today was 50 some odd degrees. Phones are ringing. People who are waiting to list properties are calling. So I think that inventory in the spring is going to there's going to be a large influx, which is okay.
And where's the buy and sell coming from? Is it intra-state or is it folks coming into the state?
A lot of intrastate that I'm seeing. People are coming into the state, but you have a lot of people who are doing the move up. With interest rates what they are right now, we have a lot of people entering into the housing market that would not have been able to buy. So they're borrowing money at 3.5%, 3.75%. So what they were paying in rent, they actually buy for less. So then they're buying the person's house who can now buy a second time house, and it's the trickle effect up, which is what we want to see.
Are you bullish on the next year, 2, 3? How's that responsible, underwatered homeowner going to be doing in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Well, I'm hoping to get that responsible underwater homeowner into a nice low mortgage. What will happen is if we get the housing values high enough, which they're moving up, interest rates are still historically low. I now have enough equity, not that I want to pull equity out, that I want to be able to refinance my 6.5% mortgage that I can't get out of because it wasn't part of programs that would have helped you do that. And now if I can bring my rate down 3%, that's cash flow that comes to me that goes into the local economy. So even the people who aren't
Or into
selling the house,
principal.
yes, that would be
Depending
the
on
really
how-
responsible way,
Right.
or shorten your term down
Yeah.
to a 15-year and pay the same payment
Right.
and get ahead that way. But you'll see that if they can create more cash in their pocket, not by cash out, but just by cash flow, then that in effect will help the economy.
All right, great. When we have some folks who think this is a good idea, you'll come and debate them for us?
Sure.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bruce Lane, not with the Taylor Swift tax, and stop calling it the Taylor Swift tax. We'll be right back. Tomorrow night, the history, the meaning, and the solemnity of Good Friday. I hope you enjoy it. We'll see you on the radio at noon at WPRO as well.